I've been a barbershopper now for over 2/3 of my life, and my life has been absolutely shaped by this hobby and this art form and the relationships that I've had. And among those relationships that I cherish most are the relationship that I have with Instant Classic, and particularly with our keynote speaker. Would you please join me in welcoming to the podium Theo Hicks.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks, Skip. Thank you very much. It is truly an honor to be here today, folks. I haven't had an opportunity to attend Midwinter very often because of my school schedule and just the way that it lines up with the conventions, but it really has become one of my favorite conventions. The overall atmosphere of just singing and joy and just fellowship, it's always an energy boost for me as I lead in to the second semester. And I do want to take a moment to recognize my dear friend Skip Crop. Again, like he mentioned, we've sung in Circle City Sound for many years together, and he has always been a great mentor and friend to me until last year. When he called me and he said, Theo, Tim Warwick just gave this amazing keynote speech, and he just did an amazing job, and then he went on to sing at the show, and he held notes for like 100 seconds and everything, and he's like, and now we want to ask you to be the keynote speaker. And I was like, Skip, surely there has to be like a height requirement, at least, But then I did dig into the YouTube archives and saw that Jim Henry did this thing before, and I know I'm at least 4 feet, so we're good. So, in all seriousness, I was truly, really nervous and just anxious from the moment he asked me last year. But he listened to all my excuses that I rattled off, and he said, Theo, we just want to hear your story. So I stand here before you just incredibly humbled and honored just to be here. I'm not going to promise anything to you today, but just a message of gratitude to you, because as I thought about what I wanted to specifically address, it just became abundantly clear that my barbershop story revolves around you and how your voice has made a difference in my life. Music has always been a huge part of my life. My mom and dad took voice lessons together. All my siblings played instruments and were in choir and band and everything. I actually was not a fan of singing when I was growing up. It took middle school. I was in middle school choir with Mr. Brown. And I didn't like singing, but I loved being in class with Mr. Brown. He was talented, he was funny and passionate just about music, and his attitude was one of those infectious kinds of attitudes so much that I just wanted to keep singing for him. So I auditioned for his after-school ensemble called Encore. And it'll be no surprise, especially to my wife, that I showed up late to the audition. And much to my surprise, I was standing outside of the door and I saw everyone was singing. And the way that he did the auditions was that all the established members were already just sitting there, and each person had to audition in front of the group. And so I walked right out. I walked all the way home. I was like, no way am I even considering doing that. And sure enough, my mom drove me all the way back as soon as I got home, and she said, you have to go in and audition. And so I got in there, but all the kids were gone at that point. And so I was like, this is great. I'll audition for you now. And he said, I'm sorry, Theo, but the point of the audition is to sing in front of your peers. I was like, what kind of monster is this who wants to embarrass me in front of all these people? But he continued and he said, it's important that my singers know that every voice matters. He said, your voice makes a difference, Theo. What a shame it would be if they missed out on the gift that you have to give. And I was still mad at him. I don't care what he said, but I still auditioned the next week in front of everyone, and he announced me as the newest member of that group. And Mr. Brown taught me to love singing again. My high school experience made my love for singing grow even more, and my high school choral director, Miss Chouette, one of the world's best educators ever. I mean, her concerts were so detailed to a point. I mean, just literally the most variety in any show. And one of the things she always did was she encouraged smaller ensembles to form. And my older sister, Kim, had been in a quartet when I was a freshman, and I wanted to be just like her. So I formed a 5-part a cappella group with some friends of mine, and we sang some a cappella covers throughout the year. And then our beatboxer graduated, And so we looked around, we're like, what the heck can we do with 4 singers? Like, nothing. Like, I mean, you laugh, but we were devastated. We're like, there is no respectable a cappella group with 4 members in it. And the case is still true with even my quartet. Just look at us. So, the baritone's name of that group is Wayne Pollard. And before breaking up, he'd invited us over to his house to try and record some of the songs using a tape player. Yeah, a tape player. Those still existed back then. And we listened back to the recording. We were all excited. It was kind of bittersweet because it's ending. But then, I might have to, I don't think I see any millennials in this room, so I don't need to explain how a tape player works, but we had finished listening to what we had recorded, and then what was left over was still playing. And it was 4 male voices singing 4-part a cappella harmony. It was just like, and then they got to the tag and they crushed it. I was like, what is that? That is cool. And Wayne was visibly embarrassed. He was like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, don't listen to that. That's my dad's dopey barbershop quartet. And I was like, no, we're gonna keep listening to that. And what we didn't realize is that in that moment, his dad's quartet called Infinity, simply by recording a rehearsal tape, had set a new barbershop adventure in place for all of us right there, without even intending to. Their voices made a difference and changed the course of our a cappella group. So if you recognize the name Pollard, it's because they're going to be all over the place this week. Craig Pollard is here competing with his quartet Checkmate. His brother Aaron has been a long-time competitor of the youth contest and sings lead in Frontier, our 2018 youth quartet contest, right over here. Sup, Aaron? I see you. So, please. Is your tenor here too? Because I'm going to make fun of him later. He's probably sleeping. Good. Fine. All right. It's all right. You're all going to be sleeping in about 5 minutes. Okay, here we go. But anyway, Craig had been listening to our quartet and this tape player from the other room, and he busted in the room, all excited. He was like, I can get you guys music. I've got some horrible outfits you can wear. It's really, really great. And he told us all about the competition scene, but because of Craig's enthusiasm, we were all just sucked right in. We wanted to try it. And there was only one issue, though. Both Wayne and I wanted to sing baritone. Our bargaining turned to arguments, and arguments turned to death threats and everything, and we finally decided the only way to settle this was rock, paper, scissors. And so now, to this day, I have been stuck singing the lead part because I lost in rock, paper, scissors. Thank you, Wayne. Craig introduced our quartet to the Pioneer District. And how many of you in here are from the Pioneer District? Yeah, all right. 7 of you. Great. So good to see you all here. That is half of them. Yeah, that's funny. But we heard Power Play for the first time. They had just won International the year before. Mike Slamka, with his absolutely beautiful voice, just became my idol as a lead singer. But then when I actually met him, I was like, No, he was a rock star, still is a rock star to me. I quickly developed that awkward habit of staring at international champions from across the room, But honestly, when I first met them, I was shocked because I was like, here are 4 singers. They are the best in the world. And they're giving our high school quartet the time of day. They're actually talking to us. That's unbelievable. It was more than just a, hi, nice to meet you, and then walk away. They invested in us, and they said, they made us feel like our voices were important to them. But I started to realize that throughout the entire convention that everybody was doing that. It didn't matter if they had a medal or not. Everyone, experienced barbershoppers, so well versed in their art form, no one held their skill levels above their heads and were like, they're just a bunch of kids. Everyone was so kind to us, so courteous, so generous. You're the most welcoming group of people on the face of the planet. That's why I'm still singing in barbershop today. We experienced it outside of Pioneer as well. Slamka's encouraged us as we went along through the years. They gave us coaching and everything. They invited us to their summer barbershop experience, Harmony Hideaway. Did anyone ever here been to the Harmony Hideaway? Yeah? The same 7 people. Good. Glad to see that. Well, if you didn't get a chance to go, it was an awesome event. They'd bring barbershoppers from all over, and they'd go out to Jack's farm in the country. We'd sing, we'd play golf, and just really have a great time. And in 2004, Mike came up to us and said, guys, there's this amazing group you've got to meet. They just won the college contest with the highest score ever. And I was like, I knew it. I knew there was a catch. Because you know what? Maybe power play was just the exception. You know, these college kids having set like a new record, they were going to have nothing to do with the likes of our puny little high school quartet. You know, and do you guys remember being in high school? I mean, some of you remember sooner than others, but that's fine. But, you know, in high school then and high school now, you know, having taught in high school and in the public schools for many years, if you didn't fit perfectly into a certain place or box, you were considered weird, right, or an outcast. And the need for acceptance and belonging drives those students the most. So much that sometimes we're willing to sacrifice who we are or what we believe in just to feel like we have a place. And I hate to say it, but sometimes it's not so different when we grow older. I mean, right? How often are we pigeonholed, you know, as people when we talk about politics or religion or anything? I mean, that's why our code of ethics says, you know, we don't bring those kinds of affairs into the society, not because they don't matter, but because that's the beauty of what we can do. You can hold true to your beliefs and your values and your identity, and we can celebrate just who you are through making music together. And we celebrate everyone in harmony. I mean, that's just a powerful thing that this society does. So anyway, here we are at the Slamka Harmony Hideaway, and I was nervous about meeting this college quartet who had set the record, you know, and who were probably going to be mean to us because we didn't belong. And while I prepared myself for the worst, could not have been any more wrong. Again, Tim, Eric, Johnny, and Chris, even though they had to compete, or they had to sing that night, Vocal Spectrum stood around for hours and sang tags with us and talked with us, and our voices mattered to them. It really made a difference, and it made a difference for me. And I was always interested in barbershop, but that experience at the Harmony Hideaway, I think, was really what got me obsessed. We talk about getting bitten by the barbershop bug. That was when it happened for me. Not just because of Vocal Spectrum, but all the tags, all the people just hanging out and just enjoying the fellowship. And there was no way that I wasn't going to be a part of this for the rest of my life. I do have to tell you, there's a funny story, like a side story. There was also this really weird, tall kid with these giant glasses, like so thick. He was hanging around while my quartet was singing tags with Vocal Spectrum, and when we were done, this kid came over to sing some tags with us. He's like, I typically sing tenor, but I think I could probably sing a few bass notes. And so we sang a few and started to say goodbye, and he pulled me aside, and he said, hey, I want to sing in a quartet with you someday. I was like, okay. And he's like, we are going to sing in a quartet together someday, and we're going to win international. I was like, what the heck is wrong with this guy? I was like, this guy is nuts. I'm going to politely just like get away. And so I said, you know, hey, I have a quartet right now, but maybe if we ever break up, you know, we can look into that. That kid's name was Kyle Kitzmiller, by the way. And I cannot make this stuff up. So as I approached my senior year, my encouragement from the people I met and the amazing experiences that I had in barbershop helped me to realize that I might actually have a future in music education. And because of Craig and Jill Pollard investing countless hours, road trips, money, and energy, I mean, they invested in me as a person and helped to define the person that I am today. And I'm honored that they've always greeted me over the years as son, and I will always be proud to be known as the third Pollard son. So, that's right. I love those guys. They'll be here later today. But Aaron's here. Thank you, Aaron. Thank you for caring. Thank you. As I consider my own future, my own parents were very supportive, and my dad in particular said to me, Theo, don't fall into the typical college student trap. They go into school focusing on their major and what they want to study instead of looking at the broader vision of what they want to do in their life. You know, and I was like, but Dad, not all who wander are lost, like it says in Lord of the Rings, you know. And, you know, he just shook his head and he's like, true, but you couldn't find your way out of a paper bag, so you need some direction. And you don't need to nod so hard, Laura, okay? So decide where you want to go and what you want to do and what lines up with your beliefs, and then decide what's the best path to get there. So what did I want to do? I wanted to learn to inspire others through teaching music. So I could make a difference in the lives of students like the many other teachers before me, like the barbershop community, like the compassion and care that you showed me. I wanted to do that for others. Miss Chouette, my high school choir teacher, wasn't as initially supported. She told me that I was a little crazy trying to consider this, because you guys would really appreciate Miss Chouette. She had no problem telling you exactly how it was. She's a no-nonsense leader. So for example, in my senior year of high school, I experienced something that was called senioritis. You've probably heard of this before, right? The inflammation of the give a crap section in the brain. And I was so afflicted by this condition that I had actually decided to skip one of the dress rehearsals to go see a movie. Oh yeah. And boy, she laid into me. I mean, I've never been told the truth so fiercely in my entire life. She said, "Are you really so thick-headed that you can't see that your voice makes a difference? You may be one of my class leaders, but let me tell you something. In the real world, nobody gives a crap how talented you are. If you are not reliable and you constantly let others down, your talent isn't worth jack squat." Amen. Amen. Yeah, and she was right. I hadn't been thinking about the others I'd affect by missing. You know, have you ever missed a chapter rehearsal? Have you ever thought about how the absence of your voice makes a difference too? And of course, there are legitimate times for missing our chorus rehearsals or our quartet rehearsals, but to quote a good friend from CCS, Greg Remke, he often says, life has a tendency of getting in the way of our barbershop sometimes. You know, but how many of you have ever thought sometimes, well, no one will miss me if it's just 1 week, right? Maybe it's just 2 weeks. And I've even thought that before. I'm the director of the chorus. But I mean, let's be honest. Most chorus directors know you're not watching anyway. Come on, you know. But we sometimes forget how much our voice makes a difference. In this particular instance with Miss Chouette, I didn't realize the absence of my voice would make such a difference. And even though it was near the end of the school year, I didn't miss another minute of choir. So I began my music education studies at Anderson University in Indiana in the fall of 2006. I have to go back and talk about that dopey kid, Kyle Kitzmiller, who had been talking to me the previous summer. And he was trying to convince me to go to Ball State for music education. I was like, hey, I'm sorry, I'm going to Anderson University instead. And back then we were talking on AOL Instant Messenger. Does anyone remember that?
You got mail.
Yeah, and we had to wait for the dial-up, that, you know, all that stuff. But all of a sudden he just sent this message. It was all caps. Dude, that's like 20 minutes from Ball State. We could be in a quartet. I was like, I cannot get rid of this guy. Oh my gosh. Run away. But we actually sang in a few quartet combinations together throughout the years. But I have to tell you, in 2008, Kyle mentioned that he was totally rocking perfect fifths with some loud tenor behind him in choir. And Kyle turned around to this fellow and said something along the lines of, dude, we have pretty nice fifths. We should sing a tag and you can be the baritone. Yeah, we have this thing for baritones in the quartet. But an enthusiastic David Zimmerman said, why, yes, I love barbershop. I did it in high school. That's my best David impression. Sorry. I don't even know if it's close. Even though Cole was still living 3 hours away, we tried to form a quartet. And I could continue to tell you the long story of how Instant Classic got together and how we broke up and got back together again. But if you really wanted to know that, you should have just come to the Gold Medal Hour 3 years ago. But snooze, you lose, right? No. But I bring it up because we'd actually formed the foursome you know today in 2009, but we broke up for a year because just the circumstances weren't right. But Kyle had convinced David and I, after we broke up, you know what, at least come to this chorus that I'm going to in Indianapolis. They're called Circle City Sound. And CCS from the start, before I had even become director, had changed my life. These men had an excitement about them that I had never experienced before in a chorus. They invested in me early on, made me feel like part of the family right away, even though I sang baritone. And because they welcomed me with what I call, with such ferocious hospitality, I stayed. And it was almost an hour and a half away from where I was living at the time, but I made the trip each week because their voices made a difference for me, and my voice seemed to matter to them. How many of you drive more than a half an hour to get to your chapter meeting? Yeah? Look around. I mean, how many of you drive more than an hour? More than 2 hours. And why? Why do we pay yearly dues, chapter dues, drive hours to rehearsal, spend countless hours on music, listening to learning tracks, paying for uniforms? And it's at this point, the BHS, they're like, why did we have him talk? Why? No. But it's because the voices that surround you have made an impact on your life. And what's more, your chapter is better with you in it. And you need to remember that. Your voice makes a difference to those around you. In fact, I blame CCS for Instant Classic getting back together. It was through the chorus, singing together, singing tags afterwards, going to Applebee's after chorus late, hating our lives the next morning. It was through all of that we became very close friends. We were actually acquaintances before who wanted to win a competition, I felt. But then it really became just about singing with friends for the pure enjoyment. So here I was, summer of 2011, with all these tools at my disposal. I had my music degree, I had a license to teach K through 12, general, vocal, and instrumental music. And I had attended several leadership workshops. I was ready to go. The quartet was back together. Laura and I had just recently got engaged. Life was good. I need a teaching position now. And most of my peers had already received their jobs in early March or April, which is when they say, new teachers, you should really try to be ready to go by then. But it was July, and I still didn't have a position. Part of that was really my own fault. I'm a horrible interviewer, really. But I was feeling really discouraged. I didn't know what I was going to do. I was about to give up, move back home to Michigan, and David called me in mid-July and said, Theo, I know we're technically competing for the same jobs, but I have to tell you about this. Fort Wayne has 3 music positions that just went up today. I applied for all of them, and you should too. And if it weren't for David, I would likely not have had a job in education that year. He decided to extend that helping hand to me, knowing that it was a potential risk for him. And we both got lucky. We interviewed, and were both offered middle school positions in the same district. And like any quartet mates would do, we decided to live together for a year. Why not? Boy, did I regret that. We were like the Bert and Ernie of Fort Wayne. It was awesome. Okay, so finally, though, this was it. This was my first day of teaching. I had high hopes. I was ready to go in there, motivate kids, change some lives. Let's take the world by storm. And reality hit. Any educators here today? You know. You know. So that first day, a few things happened. I had almost an entire class walk out of my classroom because I told them we were going to sing instead of having spa day where they could sleep all day. I was cussed at by students regularly throughout the day. I had to stop a kid from starting a fire in my class, in one class, and I had to call the principal down several times throughout the day on numerous occasions to ask for support. It felt like everything that could have gone wrong that day just did. And I remember Laura and her mom came to visit me, and we showed up at TGI Fridays, and they were there with a balloon and a card. They're like, Mr. Educator, how was your first day? And I burst into tears. And I told them everything that had happened, and I told them that I just didn't know if I could make it to the end of the year. Dr. Tim Lotzenheiser said that if at first you don't succeed, you are normal. The only way to truly fail is to not participate, which is really quitting. You're going to mess up a lot, and the more you mess up, the more you'll learn and the more you'll grow. When you keep this in mind, in one sense, we always succeed, because you either win or you learn. And believe me, I learned a lot that year. Many of the behaviors I saw were for reasons that I had never even considered in my entire life. For instance, I had a girl in one of my choirs who unabashedly slept. I would try to encourage her to stay awake. I'd tell her she could stand up, by the back window if that would help, whatever it would take. I finally went to the guidance counselor. I said, this student must hate choir. She sleeps every day in class. She won't work with me to try to stay awake. I don't know what to do. Should we try to find a class that she'll really enjoy? And the counselor replied, well, this student actually loves your class. I was like, right. Yeah, I was like, you've got to be kidding me. But she continued to explain, we're currently working really closely with a social worker to try and rectify the situation. But you see, this girl has a younger sister, and countless nights their parents drive to a bar downtown and leave the kids in the car until about 3 or 4 in the morning. The younger sister is often scared by the surroundings, and so the student sings the songs she learns in your class, to her sister to help calm her down and get her to sleep. She then stays awake all night and watches over her until they come home. But as soon as they get home, they have to get ready for the bus. If you want, I can still put her in a different class. And I said, I am so sorry. I didn't know. Please, she can stay. And I'd learned throughout the year that these students had seen horrors at home that I had never seen in my worst nightmares. Some of these kids were caught up in drug dealing. Some were trying to cope with abusive relationships at home. Some students were homeless. I mean, these students, they grew up in a world where their voice didn't matter. So I stopped trying to force my vision of what I thought the program was supposed to be. I just started to listen. These kids were saying they didn't feel like they had a place. They felt like they couldn't achieve anything. They felt like they were invisible. And they felt like they were not safe. There's a lot of work to do, and I was far from finding a solution, but I changed my outlook and began to turn the corner. I allowed students more liberty to pick songs that they enjoyed singing. For classes that didn't really want to sing, I created a fun Friday where we would play Kodai and Orff music games instead of the typical choir rehearsal. We'd have sing-alongs when we watched the occasional musical, anything that offered them a positive musical experience and gave them some joy throughout the day. I created an after-school ensemble called Encore. So students who really love to sing could gather and have a more typical choir experience. And that choir and the sixth grade choir agreed that they wanted to go to our state music festival, ISMA festival. So we took them to the festival, and they had earned a silver medal. And at first I thought they might be disappointed, but they celebrated like they had just won the lottery. They had never won any kind of award before or been recognized. Was it educationally sound, the things that I did that year? Was it what I learned in college? Heck no, it was not. And I can't say that some of the things I did I learned or I didn't learn, but did I become upset and frustrated? Daily, absolutely, but it didn't matter to me. What mattered was that I wanted my students to feel like they had a voice in my class. Barbershop had taught me the importance of making your voice feel heard. I wanted to provide that same beacon of light that you gave to me to those students. Most of the times I find that we don't really communicate. We just take turns talking. When we feel like our voice doesn't matter, I think our talking points revolve around just trying to be heard rather than trying to prove you're right, rather than sharing and caring. I've been taught that if you have a choice between being right and being kind, you should choose kindness first. Because you can always go back later and be right, but you can't go back later and be kind. In a world where we have all this data, all this statistics, so many businesses fall in the trap of working towards the numbers, even education. They're trying to quantify learning with systematic evaluations and make teachers focus on numbers, not students. And we have a great opportunity as barbershoppers, as performers, educators, as a community whose voice makes a difference. We can show the world that there are things that can't be measured that still matter. Deal with it. This wasn't the job that I thought that I was going to get. It wasn't the pristine choral program that Miss Chouette had. I was constantly changing things, trying to pick up the pieces around me, trying to create something meaningful out of chaos. And I've learned that you'll never have it all together. Life is a process, not an arrival. As the great Jim Henry said, it's all about the journey, stupid. It's not the destination. Accept what it is and where you are and move forward. And I did survive that year. And so did my students. And I was going to consider staying. Laura and I got married, but we moved further away from Fort Wayne, so I resigned and found employment at a different school. But the things that I learned at Lane Middle School where I taught, I carried with me through all of my teaching. Even though it was a different school and different demographics, different students, show them that their voice makes a difference. It doesn't matter who you are or where you come from. Your voice matters. And I do want to tell you the story of two students at Madison Grant. Student A was a freshman when we first met. He wasn't in my class. He had stumbled into my classroom after school one day with some friends of his that were in my class. And I overheard him saying, I was in my office working, and I heard him say, "Are you kidding? This class isn't for me. I can't sing." And let me tell you this, I hate that excuse. I don't take choir because I don't sing. Well, do you take Spanish class because you know Spanish already? It's ridiculous. And no one is tone deaf. I hate that one too. I'm tone deaf. No one is tone deaf. If you were tone deaf, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference between the voices of Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. Like, you wouldn't know. So don't you give me that tone deaf excuse. It's all about training and experience, right? I've always believed that if the attitude's in the right place, anything is possible. After twisting his arm a bit and challenging him, I convinced him to sign up for choir. It was a dare. I was like, I bet you couldn't make it through a year of choir. And so that was a challenge. He accepted it. Boy, did I regret that. The first day he came into class, I handed him his folder of music. He scoffed at me. He said, "I don't read music, brah. I never could. I never will." He was hardly ever confident on his part. He had low self-confidence. He was a nuisance and a disturbance to the rest of the class. I could hardly get anything done. He was always very vocal about the songs that I gave to the choir and how my musical taste was older than Moses. Student A. Student B was one of my class leaders in his senior year. He was the class president, the bass section leader. He held sectionals without me even asking him to. He was the lead in our musical the previous year. He went to solo ensemble and got gold in both state and the district levels. And actually started coming to Circle City Sound with me on Monday nights and served as our membership VP for a time. He was a leader to his fellow students and an inspiration to me as a teacher. So A and B. Here's the moral of the story. The only thing that separates student A from student B is one experience at Harmony Explosion. In fact, if you haven't put it together already, student A and B are the same person. They are the same student. His name is Kevin Kellogg. Kevin is still a dear friend to this day, and his life was changed after attending one barbershop event. That is the power that you have over everyone. That is the power. Your voice made a difference to him, and barbershop changes lives. I sent many students to those Harmony Explosion camps, and every single one of them came back as one of the strongest student leaders I've ever had in my classes. Ever. That's what you do. 2015 was a crazy year for a lot of reasons. There were a lot of really great things that happened. My wife and I had recently become homeowners. I became the full-time director of CCS. I directed my very first international that year. The quartet did a thing that year. And we were singing shows really quite frequently. In that same year, however, I went through one of the most challenging ordeals of my entire life. Vocal surgery. In September, I had noticed that my voice was different. It was just a few months after the quartet had won international. I noticed a loss of range, couldn't sing for very long before getting fatigued, and it hurt to speak at times. And after convincing myself that I was not a hypochondriac, I went to the ENT where they diagnosed me with a vocal polyp on my right vocal fold. And they said the only way to get rid of it was through surgery. And of course, my mind went immediately to Julie Andrews, right, who had her vocal issues and had surgery, and then her singing career was no more. As a voice teacher, as a performer, as a director, as a singer, I was crushed. My voice was my career, it was my ministry, it was my leadership, my identity. And I was just embarrassed. How does a teacher of the voice misuse his own instrument and then expect to be able to help others? The depression and anxiety I felt was intense, but I made it through. My wife was there for me. My family was there for me. My quartet and my chorus was there for me. You were all there for me. All of you. I got cards and flowers from numerous choruses and chapters. I was put on prayer lists of numerous chapters, both Brothers in Southern Gateway Chorus, Lexington chapter in Kentucky, Circle City Sound, our Sweet Adeline Sisters, and Capital City Chorus. I received prayer blankets, flowers, cards. I had posted on Facebook a brief summary of what had happened, and these were some of the things that you said to me. Thoughts and prayers during this trying time. Try to stay positive and do all the post-op work. There are lots of folks behind you, pal. Theo, prayers for you, my friend. You will come out stronger on all levels for this. This is just a bump in the road, my dear. You will see the world in a different light. You've got this one. Theo, you're going to be fine and bounce back even stronger. I'm so excited for the future of Instant Classic and the gift you bring to every performance. Rest up and get back in the game, brother. Just got done praying for you with the kids and will continue to do so. From one of my students, you told me once you cannot change the direction of the wind, but you can change the direction of your sails. It was a little modified as you kind of suck at analogies and metaphors. He is not wrong. You've given me so much hope in even your time of trial. I know you can do this. A lot of people love you, and I know you have at least 5 choirs. I had 6 that love you. Know that I'm always here to help as much as I can. I had the surgery in late October that year. After following doctor's strict orders, I was singing at Midwinter the following January with the quartet. And now I feel better than ever. The encouragement that you gave to me has helped me to learn from that experience, and now I view that as one of the best things that's ever happened to me. My voice truly feels better than it did. My range increased. I started taking voice lessons again. I'm trying to sing with better technique all the time. I've learned to speak better when I teach. I don't complain about my voice hurting as much as I used to. And your voice made a difference for me. It gave me hope when I didn't have any. And because of you, I feel my mission even stronger and even more motivated to empower other voices through education. Barbershop has not only introduced me to new friends and family, but it's allowed me to stay connected with my friends and family over the years. Chris Cordell, Aaron Pollard of Frontier, your youth quartet champions, and myself, and another very special individual named George Jackson III. We all came from the same high school. Though we never sang in a quartet, we were the 4 who continued to stay connected through Barbershop, even after high school. Let me tell you about my dear friend, George Jackson III. George had one of the biggest booming bass voices I've ever heard in my entire life. We should have had him in Instant Classic. That's right. We had met in Michoud choirs, and I remember the day we met George. We were going around the room introducing ourselves, and George stood up and he said, "My name is George, and I sing bass." That's as low as you're going to get from me, okay? Wayne and I instantly knew we need his voice for tag singing. Oh my gosh. And so there were countless days where we would stay after school and sing tags in the echo chamber near the choir room. It was just a storm room. He went on to study broadcasting at Spring Arbor University and learned to further develop that deep radio voice. Since exposing him to Barbershop, he went on to join the society. He formed a quartet with his father, who was not into singing at the time, and he got George Jackson Jr., the father, right, to be in Barbershop, and he's in it to this day. They both started singing regularly in a quartet together called Detroit Sound Machine. The only thing bigger than George's voice was his heart. I'd never met anyone with a kinder bone in their body than George. I never saw him without a smile. He was always wanting to sing one more tag or one more song, and he gave the best bear hugs I've ever had. No matter who you are, where you came from, or what you believed, how you looked, none of that mattered to George. George was an amazing example of what it meant to be a true ambassador for Barbershop and what it meant to be just a beautiful human being. And Friday, December 27th of 2013 is a day that I will never forget. My wife and I were getting ready to leave our apartment to go celebrate our 1-year anniversary, and I got a call in the middle of the day from George's father. "Theo, this is George Jackson. I wanted to call and let you know that George passed away last night in his sleep." And the world seemed to have stopped spinning for a moment. I had just sung a tag with him a month earlier. Instant Classic sang on the Pontiac Waterford show, and both George and his father came up to the Afterglow to hang out, to sing tags, and to catch up on life. I said, "George, what happened?" He said, "We don't know. He just went to bed and didn't wake up." George's father has told me on numerous occasions what he thanks God for every day. Through his son George, he was given the gift of Barbershop that helped him survive the tragedy of his son's unexpected death. he would have been 29 this April. Your voice brings comfort, your art brings healing, and your voice makes a difference. George's voice is one that I will never forget. His voice impacted my life and countless others who knew him. The absence of his voice is deafening, but his beautiful soul lives on in the spirit of the thing he loved the most, barbershop. His parents organized a beautiful tribute for him by collecting over $1,500 in donations, giving it directly to Harmony Foundation in George's name, and now his name holds a place on the wall of the BHS headquarters on the Keep a Melody Ringing Memorial so that his voice can continue to make a difference. And because your voice made a difference for me, I'm finishing up my master's degree and doctorate in choral conducting. I want to inspire future educators, students, and directors around the world and give them the love and encouragement you gave to me, all because Barbershop thought I was worth something. Through Barbershop, I've had the opportunity to teach all over the world, to arrange music for groups I'd never thought I'd arrange for in a million years, to meet thousands of people, to be changed by their stories and impacted by their love of barbershop, to sing with my brothers in Instant Classic, to make the most fulfilling music on Monday nights with my chorus family, Circle City Sound. Being part of that chapter has been so much more than a hobby. The men of Circle City Sound inspire me on a weekly basis, and I learn so much from them. Within the past year, we've been focusing on outreach and giving voice to our surrounding community. And I know that our voices are making a difference. We hosted a spring show to honor our chorus's past membership over the past 70 years, and its theme was on the importance of their voice in our history. And we had about 60 to 70 guys of our own members up there, but when we had our finale of that old quartet of mine, we had over 120 members on the stage. We continue our support of music education in Indiana through yearly donations toward the Harmony Explosion Camp in our state. On Veterans Day, we hosted a performance that raised over $1,200 for the Hoosier Veterans Assistance Foundation. During our annual holiday show, we announced our recent partnership with the Villages Family Services Agency and donated 61 gifts to adopted and foster children in need for Christmas. And after caroling around Indianapolis throughout the holidays, we volunteered at the Wheeler Missions Homeless Center for Men, donating clothing, supplies, and singing for them, spreading the joy of Christmas. These men are one of my biggest sources of inspiration in my life. In 2017, we competed at the International Chorus Contest, and you can watch our video, I won't go into that, but our first song, arranged by our very own Patrick McAlexander, that's right, he's ours. I know he belongs to other chapters, but he was Indy's first. The whole point of our contest package was to talk about heroes, and the first song was all about superheroes. And a lot of people thought I just wanted to be the opportunity to be a short, chubby Iron Man. But really, it was all about our second song, where in the first song we'd unveiled all of these superheroes coming out of the chorus, for, just guys were wearing just normal clothes. But then the second song focused on the real heroes, policemen, firefighters, pastors, teachers, scout leaders. I asked the men in our preparations to think of one hero in their life, one person whose voice made a difference to them, and dedicate their performance to them. And for me, it was easy, because my heroes were standing right in front of me. We began our discussion as a chapter on how to incorporate the Society's new vision, Everyone in Harmony. As a chorus, we're still figuring a lot of things out. And throughout the Society, there's been a lot of excited voices about this change. There have been voices that have expressed concern and some anger. But you know what? I believe that's all rooted in fear. The fear of losing some of the cherished traditions over the past 80 years. As a choral educator, men's choruses are not as common in the choral landscape of today. Barbershop has always brought a unique roster of male choruses to the American choral scene. But you have to look at the big picture. We've done so much more than that. So much more. Through the Barbershop Harmony Society, our affiliates, Harmony Inc., Sweet Adelines International, we have to realize that our voices have brought the voice of the style itself. Close four-part harmony, focused on ringing overtones, singing songs for everyone, and performing from the heart. That is at the core of our style. It's the idea of tradition that's actually why I'm excited for this change. I can now start the tradition in my own family of sharing this thing that I love with all my heart with my wife, with my daughter. Barbershop doesn't have to be a spectator sport for them anymore. They can join this amazing community and sing. That is what our world needs more than anything, singing. And now the tradition isn't rooted in age, race, or gender. It's in the musical style and the amazing humans who sing it. Circle City Sound will continue to have a men's barbershop chorus. I'm excited to look down the road and propose a mixed chorus for our chapter umbrella, possibly a women's chorus. We will cherish our tradition and embrace everyone in harmony. And I have so much to be thankful for in barbershop. And it's funny how all of it has worked out so far. Barbershop has given me so much when I was younger. I wanted to make it my life goal to give back, because I believe that you're only worth what you can give away. And yet every time I invest, the return is far greater than I could have ever expected. Whether you're cheering for a quartet or chorus on the stage this week, or moving forward, singing in contests this week, or just singing tags, remember that your voice not only rings with overtones, but with love for your brothers and sisters in harmony. Remember that your voice brings healing to those in need. And remember that you bring a light into the world. It's one of the strongest lights that I've ever seen. Your voice can make a difference. Your voice has made a difference. Thank you for making a difference in mine.